On a sun-scorched plain in southern Italy, in the summer of 216 BCE, the fate of the Roman Republic hung by a single slender thread. Two of the ancient world's mightiest powers, Rome and Carthage, were about to collide in what would become one of the most devastating and legendary battles in all of human history. This is the story of how a tactical genius named Hannibal Barca, facing a Roman army nearly twice the size of his own, achieved the unthinkable. The complete and utter annihilation of a superior force through sheer cunning, unwavering discipline, and breathtaking audacity. This is the story of the Battle of Cannae, Rome's darkest day, and Hannibal's immortal triumph. To truly grasp the brilliance of Cannae, we have to travel back in time, across the Mediterranean Sea to North Africa. There lay Carthage, the jewel of the Western Sea. It was a naval superpower, a wealthy and ambitious empire stretching across North Africa and deep into Spain, ruled by merchants and generals, not by kings. But Carthage had a powerful rival, the up-and-coming Republic of Rome. After the bitter First Punic War, Rome had seized Carthage's prized island of Sicily, humiliating its old foe and forcing it to pay crippling reparations. But from this bitterness, a new leader emerged, Hannibal Barca, a fierce general who vowed to restore Carthaginian power. And from his bloodline came a son who would shake the world, Hannibal. According to the historian Livy, as a young boy, Hannibal was made to swear a solemn oath before his father, an oath of eternal, undying hatred toward Rome. And when he came of age, he made good on that promise. By 218 BCE, Hannibal had forged a formidable, battle-hardened army in Spain. Then, in a military feat that still beggars belief, he led his troops, his cavalry, and even his famous war elephants on an impossible journey across the freezing, towering peaks of the Alps and into the heart of Italy. The march was brutal. Thousands of his men perished from the cold, from starvation, and from ambushes by local tribes. But the men who survived were transformed. They were no longer just Africans, Spaniards, and Gauls. They were hardened veterans, loyal only to their commander, and they were about to write their names in history. Once in Italy, Hannibal struck with the speed and lethality of a viper. First at the Trebia River and then in a masterful ambush at Lake Trasimene, he crushed one Roman army after another. Rome was stunned, thrown into a state of panic. Entire legions, the backbone of Roman power, were simply wiped off the map. But Hannibal's true genius wasn't just in winning battles. It was in the psychological warfare he waged, making the name Hannibal a source of pure terror across the Italian peninsula. He roamed the countryside, almost at will, defeating every army sent to stop him. Yet, despite the panic, the Roman Senate refused to yield. Rome's will was forged from iron. They raised new armies, bigger and more determined than ever before. In 216 BCE, they appointed two consuls to lead them, Lucius Aemilius Paulus, a cautious veteran, and Gaius Terentius Varro, an aggressive and ambitious politician. Their mission was simple and absolute: find Hannibal, engage him in a decisive battle, and destroy his army once and for all. And so, the stage was set for the ultimate confrontation near a small, dusty village in southern Italy called Cannae. On the morning of August 2nd, 216 BCE, two colossal armies faced each other across that wide, flat plain. The Roman force was simply enormous, nearly 86,000 men, the largest army Rome had ever put into the field. Command rotated daily between the two consuls. On this fateful day, it was the turn of the impetuous Varro, and he was hungry for a glorious, decisive victory. Opposite them stood Hannibal, with only around 50,000 troops, a diverse mix of Libyan spearmen, Spanish swordsmen, Gallic warriors, and elite Numidian cavalry. They came from many lands, spoke different languages, but under Hannibal's command, they fought as a single, lethal entity. Hannibal knew he couldn't win a battle of brute strength, so he would win with his mind. He arranged his battle line in a daring and unconventional formation, a crescent shape, bowing out toward the Romans. He placed his weakest troops, the Spaniards and Gauls, in the bulging center, while his elite, heavily armed African infantry were held back on the flanks. His superior cavalry, led by the brilliant Hannibal, waited on both wings, ready to strike. The formation looked weak. It seemed to be inviting the Romans to smash right through the middle. And that was precisely the trap. As the morning sun climbed higher, the Roman legions advanced, a massive, unstoppable wall of shields, steel, and disciplined might. They crashed into Hannibal's thin center with thunderous force. As expected, the Carthaginian line began to bend backward under the immense pressure. The Romans surged forward, sensing victory was close, believing they were breaking the enemy line. But this was no chaotic retreat. It was a perfectly executed, deliberate withdrawal. Every step backward was carefully calculated, designed to draw the massive Roman formation deeper and deeper into the heart of the Carthaginian army. Then, at the critical moment, Hannibal gave the signal. His elite African infantry, who had been held in reserve on the flanks, wheeled inward, slamming into the exposed sides of the Roman legions. At the very same time, Hannibal's cavalry, having already routed the weaker Roman horsemen, came thundering in from the rear, completing the circle. In a matter of minutes, the largest army Rome had ever assembled was completely surrounded. A perfect encirclement, an inescapable ring of death, closing tighter and tighter. The Roman soldiers, packed together so densely they could barely lift their arms to swing their swords, were trapped with nowhere to run and nowhere to hide. What followed was not a battle. It was a methodical, merciless slaughter. For hours, the Carthaginians cut them down. The plains of Cannae became a sea of bodies, a horrifying scene of men trampled, suffocated, and butchered in the chaos. By the end of the day, an estimated 50,000 Romans lay dead. It was the greatest single-day loss in the long and bloody history of Rome, a catastrophe of unimaginable proportions. Cannae wasn't just a defeat. It was a near-total annihilation. The dead included one of the consuls, dozens of senators, and the very flower of the Roman aristocracy. When news of the disaster reached the capital, Rome was consumed by panic and grief. But even in its darkest hour, Rome did not surrender. The Senate, in an act of incredible resolve, forbade public mourning. They immediately began raising new armies, enlisting boys who were barely old enough to be considered men. They fortified the city walls and vowed to fight on until Carthage itself was nothing but dust. Hannibal had won the most brilliant battle in history, but he had not won the war. In the years that followed, Hannibal remained undefeated on Italian soil. But he was a general without a state to back him. Crucial reinforcements and supplies from Carthage never arrived in the numbers he needed. Rome, now guided by the cautious strategy of Fabius Maximus, nicknamed the Delayer, refused to face Hannibal in another open battle. Instead, they shadowed his army, launching guerrilla attacks, cutting off his supply lines, and slowly, patiently, bleeding his veteran forces dry. Years later, Hannibal was finally recalled to Africa to defend his homeland against a new Roman threat. And there, in 202 BCE, at the Battle of Zama, he faced his ultimate rival, the Roman general Publius Cornelius Scipio. Scipio was a brilliant commander who had spent years studying and learning from Hannibal's own tactics. On the plains of North Africa, the student finally defeated the master. For this historic victory, Scipio was forever after known as Scipio Africanus, the conqueror of Africa. Carthage was defeated, its empire dismantled, and Rome emerged as the undisputed master of the Mediterranean. But the legend of Cannae, Hannibal's masterpiece, would live on forever. For over 2,000 years, military commanders and strategists have studied the perfect double envelopment at Cannae. From Napoleon to Germany's Schlieffen Plan to General Patton, military leaders have dreamed of recreating the tactical perfection of that day. To this day, in military academies around the world, a Cannae remains the ultimate expression for a battle of total encirclement and annihilation. Yet the deeper lesson of Cannae lies not just in Hannibal's genius, but in Rome's astonishing resilience. Defeated, humiliated, and staring into the abyss of total collapse, Rome refused to break. And that is why the Battle of Cannae truly endures. It's not just a story of tactical brilliance and destruction. It's a timeless testament to endurance, resolve, and the unbreakable power of the human spirit. The plains of Cannae are quiet now. The wind that blows across them carries only whispers, echoes of courage, of terror, and of genius. It was there, more than 2 millennia ago, that two great civilizations met in a single, brutal moment that would forever shape the course of history. And it was from the ashes of that terrible day that Rome learned its greatest lesson, that true strength lies not just in winning victories, but in the unwavering will to rise again after defeat. If you enjoyed this journey back in time, please don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit that notification bell for more epic stories of strategy, conflict, and the incredible events that shaped our world. Your support helps us keep history alive. Thank you so much for watching.